going to start. Welcome to our webinar today titled GIS for Law Enforcement Intelligence Fusion. My name is Carl Walter. I am the Industry Manager for our Homeland and National Security efforts here at Esri. Rob Fairstein will be helping me facilitate this call today, and he is our lead solutions engineer also on our Homeland Security and National Security team here at Esri. While our title here today is Law Enforcement Intelligence Fusion, we have a much broader discussion that we're going to be talking about today. I think we have over 500 attendees, many from local, state, and federal law enforcement in the U.S., as well as emergency management, military, and even corporate security. But we also have a whole host of international participants today from various national security agencies across the globe. Our agenda will start off with a high-level introduction of what we mean by platform and the ArcGIS platform, and also one of a newer concept here that we refer to as WebGIS. We will also be going through a rapid example of several use cases prior to going into much deeper dives on 4 examples. And those 4 studies or examples that we are going to be talking about today come from Ryan Walsh, who is the director of the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, John Petter, who is one of our senior solutions engineers here at Esri, Matthew White, who is the director of the Northeast Florida Fusion Center, and Art Haddad and Linda Beal, who are on our product development team here at ESRI. Ryan is going to discuss a little bit about what a fusion center is briefly, and exactly what the Boston Regional Intelligence Center is functionally, and then he's going to go into some of their in-house GIS programs at the BRIC, where they have done some very interesting GIS work where they've integrated data from 9 different cities in the Boston metro area involving CAD 911 data, RMS, field interview data, again from the entire Boston metro area, Brookline, Somerville, Cambridge, and 8 other cities. Then John Petter is going to be demonstrating a new desktop application called Drone to Map, which from the collection side gives us end-to-end workflow from drone imaging, and you can share the results of that collection either in ArcGIS Online or behind your firewall in Portal for ArcGIS, and it is literally near real-time imagery, collection, and data management all coming from a drone. So the days of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and many, many months for the collection of aerial imagery and the processing of that data prior to bringing it into a GIS are really over. This is something that can be done in literally several hours. And then Matt is going to be talking about some of his efforts at the Northeast Florida Fusion Center, where he is fusing structured and unstructured data together and bringing that into his GIS. Traditionally, much of the data that GIS users and analysts have been forced to use was structured data coming from maybe a records management system, a CAD 911 system, an Intel system, but also embedded into those systems are unstructured data pools of narratives, and oftentimes there's tons of hidden and very valuable data in that, and Matt's going to show how he's actually leveraging that data in a unique way. And then Art Haddad and Linda Beal are going to talk about one of the new products that they are the product development leads here at ESRI, called Insights for ArcGIS, where you literally can, in one user interface, bring together tables, maps, charts, and interact with them simultaneously, all in one user interface. And from a collection and analysis standpoint, that is, I think, one of the great future products that we have here at ESRI. So I'm going to turn this over to Rob, where he's going to talk a little bit about the platform, the ArcGIS platform, and what we mean by WebGIS and how it can help you with the collection and sharing of all of your data.
Hey, thanks, Carl, and good morning, everyone. Today you'll be seeing these great examples of how the ArcGIS platform is leveraged to support missions similar to your own. The ArcGIS platform delivers the power of WebGIS and is easily configured to support your mission. So what is this WebGIS concept that Carl mentioned? Well, it's pretty simple. WebGIS enables your organization to securely harness the power of location-based data across all of your systems and devices. So today, we'll be looking at a few operational benefits of the ArcGIS platform to include integrating your data. So the platform can integrate anything from spreadsheets to shape files to the real-time tracking and your big data stores. ArcGIS creates a centralized environment for your organization and partners to manage and dynamically engage your mission and critical data. You'll also see spatial analytics. GIS turns data into insight by leveraging the science of geography to support your mission. And most importantly, and probably my favorite, and that's promoting a culture of sharing and collaboration by enabling people to work together securely through the sharing of data, applications, and your own mission knowledge. So today during the presentation, please feel free to ask questions, and I look forward to working with you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So like I said, the way we're going to kind of structure the final components of our hour here, I'm going to go through and just rapidly discuss some potential use cases that we see folks using across the country. It's designed to be just a very quick review, and what we'd like you to do prior to us getting in some of the deeper dives, identify some of these use cases that I'm about to go through here, and just please indicate on your dashboard if you are interested in receiving more information on some of these different use cases. So special event management for planned and unplanned events, being able to bring in your operational plans, literally draw them into your map and share that data. From a mobile standpoint, being able to enable your field force to collect information, field intelligence out on the streets, submit that information back into centralized databases or into a command center, so you're not forced to be always using GIS as a back office tool. You're enabled to enable your field force. Counterterrorism, demographics, and human intelligence, being able to identify a community of interest with proper predicate based on their language or other demographics, understand where those populations exist in higher densities nationally, being able to bring that down to identify even the states with the greatest populations of your community of interest down to block groups, and then even interrelating that demographic data or that community of interest data with other types of socioeconomic indicators such as foreclosures and other quality of life types of indicators. But again, the ability to bring in non-traditional sources of data and interrelate them with your intelligence sources. Integration with CCTV. GIS is the platform is a very powerful tool where with your existing camera networks, you can integrate them into your mapping platform. Port security, the ability to bring in AVL, AIS, radar, and track all the movement of ships, vessels, leisure craft, as well as public safety vehicles all at one time, all in one environment. Social media, geographic-based analysis, being able to bring in the Twitter feeds, the Facebook, the Instagram, all into one environment, and even geofence an area of interest like a stadium or a marathon route to understand what's being discussed in those environments. Bringing in floor plans to support active shooter environments, to create pre-plans, and to be able to activate those plans when a tactical operation actually goes into play. 3D data, being able to bring in this type of information and this type of visualization into your operational planning. What we call a police canvas, or even a search and rescue operation, where you can track parcels or block groups or even user-defined blocks of areas that have been searched or not been searched. And then again, basic operational planning, how to plan for a special event, and then operationalize that once it goes live, and even support deconfliction of where your officers are, where they're supposed to be, and tracking real-time movement through GPS. WMD hazard modeling, consequence management, being able to understand the effects, the affected population, the affected geographies after a bomb blast or a chemical release. Basic things from a local law enforcement standpoint, being able to bring in your drug data, your drug arrests, your drugs calls for service, and then interrelate that with an operational plan. And then quality of life indicators, again, another example of non-traditional data sets into your operational environment. And then something as basic as hotspot policing, being able to aggregate and show densities of activity to focus where resources should be applied to prevent, interdict, and enforce. So now we're going to push this over to Ryan Walsh, where he's going to go through a deeper dive on some of the things that are occurring at the Boston Regional Intelligence Center. And Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Carl, and thanks for having me today. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, afternoon on the East Coast, at least. So just really briefly, I just want to sort of explain what exactly the BRIC is and sort of our role in Boston and the region, and then get into two of our sort of major GIS projects, two out of a couple that we've been working on the past couple of years that I think show the sort of operationalization of the platform that Carl was just kind of talking about. So the BRIC, or Boston Regional Intelligence Center, is a major urban area fusion center, one of 78 fusion centers across the country. We were established in 2005 to coordinate the efforts of the 9 communities in the Metro Boston area. So that's where that sort of cross-jurisdiction collaboration is really key to our operation. And since our inception, we've really become a hub for the collection, synthesis, analysis, and dissemination of both strategic and tactical intelligence to public and private sector partners. So a key part of our role here is sort of sharing information across those borders of those 9 entities. You know, we're housed within the Boston Police Department, but our responsibilities are sort of much wider than that. So we've used some of these GIS tools to really be our main sort of data sharing platform. Sort of, you know, we have sort of the human relationships, of course, with those jurisdictions, but to help us on the data side, we've really used GIS to help us bridge those gaps. So the first project I'm going to talk about today is our crime mapping dashboard that you see in front of you here. It's a web-based tool that merges all that data from all those 9 jurisdictions in a single sort of web-based platform that's accessible to all of our officers and our analysts here. So we're sort of trying to decentralize that access to the data through a web-based platform here. It contains a rolling 3-year window of data, and it's updated every 3 hours. So we also kind of are bringing that, you know, near real-time aspect to it. So, you know, you can look at things in dashboard mode, see specific pages for specific crime types, looking at, you know, violent crimes over the last 7 days, things like that. And this is just kind of automatically updated in front of people. So it really gives you, you know, maybe a command level type view of the data. You can also, through analysis mode in the dashboard, ask more specific questions of your data. So this is sort of where I think the really powerful analysis features come to light. Through this quick queries, you can ask sort of specific questions. You know, let's see how many robberies we had in a specific area that, you know, we allowed the user to draw maybe a cross-border area here, crossing a couple of our jurisdictional boundaries, and then, you know, pick a time period, last 30 days here, and take a quick sort of interrogation of your data. Unfortunately, I only got 1 point back here, but you sort of get your typical map interaction there. And then, you know, let's say if we wanted to narrow down around this point and you want to start maybe sort of an investigative workflow, you could go in and say, all right, show me all the field interviews that officers have conducted, you know, maybe right around that area of that where we had that robbery to maybe look at, you know, who's active in that area, things like that. Maybe I'll expand this back a little bit to pull back some more data. And then basically you can start looking at these are people who have been stopped in that area and talked to for different reasons in the police department. So the dashboard just allows us to really sort of interrogate that data in that way, get in there, look across the boundaries of the jurisdictions, allow the user some simple GIS analysis tools to get in there and look at the data. It's all, you know, refreshed in the background. There's no software install, all that kind of piece for us. The best thing about the tool, I think, you know, aside from those analysis features, is that the data that resides behind that dashboard, all that data that you saw me interacting with there, exists outside of the dashboard as well, and we're able to pull that into other analysis applications. So the dashboard allows us to kind of bring it together. There's some import processing in the background that pulls it all together, but then it's accessible to us, in just a regular sort of SQL database that we can then hit with all of our other analysis tools. So we're not locked into using just that one tool for our analysis. The second tool I'm going to show today is the Real-Time Crime Center application that we've built out. It's a web app builder-based application. It's sort of a newer Esri technology that we've been able to leverage here, mostly out-of-the-box configuration. We have done a little bit of customization, but it's mainly out-of-the-box integration that you'll see here. So we use this tool to try to put this in front of our analysts every day from sort of our real-time incident response sort of framework. So these red dots that you see on the map are our CAD calls, live streaming coming in, updated every 30 seconds. And then, as I zoom in here, you see some of our cameras, the camera locations that the city has, a couple different camera systems that we run. Let's say that this call right here is some sort of a suspicious call of some sort, and the user can come in with some quick buffering tools, drop a point right around there, and get a quick sort of interrogation of the data to see, what types of maybe, critical infrastructure assets we have around there. And I can see that, oh, there's my fire alarm dispatch center is right near there. So maybe I want to be more concerned or maybe less concerned about an incident at that point. And then, if we do have that around there, we've integrated another sort of out-of-the-box Esri tool, the bomb threat add-in, I think it's called, technically, where you can take a point and just quickly, say that's a suspicious package call. We can drop a point on the map, be able to pick, what type of device it is, say, oh, it's a suspicious vehicle right there, and then execute and have a quick analysis run based on the, ATF and FBI standards for where should your evacuation zone be, where should your further out, zones be for different things. Shelter-in-place zones, and then it automatically, see in the background here, has queried the BRICS critical infrastructure data to see what other assets might be around there, and the user can just quickly see there. We've also done some data enrichment that's sort of built in here, where you can quickly see, what type of population am I looking at in this area if I did have to do an evacuation. Am I looking at a lot of elderly people, or am I looking at a lot of college-age kids? In Boston, we have a very large college population, so the evacuation mechanism might be different there depending on how you're doing it there. I also just want to quickly highlight, some of the different layers that we have in the application. We tried to centralize all the data from the analyst perspective. They have access to, incidents, arrests, all those different types of data sets in one application that we're able to, serve those up through feature services and pull them into the application here for the user to really interrogate all different types of data sets. And then finally, I just want to touch on from a incident sort of special event planning type perspective. If we did need to do a response, it's a sort of an unplanned event maybe, but we allow the user to come in here and do some editing on the data through some built templates. Esri has a special events template and an incident response template that you can download out there. And if you needed to draw quickly on the map a standoff area, go in and you can quickly draw on the map. And then because we've set a layer refresh on this, it'll sort of refresh on all the other analysts who are using this application. They'll see it automatically pop up if we need to note some staging area for different groups of people or something. We can put different points on the map, maybe a roadblock or highlight an evacuation route, things like that. So if you have a pre-plan before the incident or before an event or something, obviously it's great to get that in there beforehand. But you might oftentimes we're focused on a situation where we just don't have that capability to know what's going to happen in advance, but we can quickly get in there through some preset points and drop them on the map and allow that to sort of automatically refresh through the application. So one major point that I also want to make on this application is that we've tried to implement it so that the analysts are using it every day, so that it's not just oh, we have 5 special events a year, everyone's familiar with the marathon or our 4th of July celebration, and that people are trying to learn a new tool sort of on the fly. The goal is to make these applications sort of so integral to the analyst's workflow that they really can sort of use them every day, be in there, and then when that special event happens, when that unplanned emergency happens, they're ready to go. They're already familiar with the different querying tools, some of the different types of tools that are in there. Just to also highlight, there's some other sort of basic GIS tools ability to put in bookmarks, a measuring tool. Sometimes it's the simplest thing. People just want to know how long is that street, maybe, or special operators or something like that need to know, or the fire department wants to know, questions like that. Of course, the ability to change base maps. A lot of people have good imagery that they want to bring in, different types of base maps that they want to bring in. John's going to talk in a minute about drone to map, newer technology. So, all that stuff can sort of be brought in, I think, and really add to the mapping experience for the end user.
So one of the key things there, Ryan, is the fact that 9 communities participate in this, in the sharing of data all into one centralized database, and 9 communities can use all that regional data to support some of the things, some of their specific workflows, where in the past they didn't have access to counterparts in different towns next door. And it's not just police, it's police, fire, EMS, and their 911 systems integrated all in real time. So I think that's a pretty significant and unique deployment of the technology. So if anybody has questions for Ryan, you can write them into your dashboard from the GoToWebinar. And we're going to move this now over to John Petter, where he's going to talk about some of the collection capabilities in drone to map and how that real-time, near real-time imagery can be used to support a lot of things, damage assessments, but even some counterterrorism workflows and surveillance workflows. So John, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Carl. So I'm pretty excited to show you drone to map today. Drones have become much more sort of pervasive than they had been. They've sort of gone from hobbyist to now enterprise. And there's a lot of advantages in flying footage with a drone. Sort of traditional workflows to get imagery have been either to fly airplane or satellite view. Both can be costly to actually do the data acquisition, to actually go fly it, and then processing that afterwards can take a tremendous amount of time and money to get that into your system. So nowadays with drones, they're inexpensive to purchase, they're easy to fly, and you can actually start to get a really quick turnaround on your data. And that's what I'm going to show you the drone to map software today. So I have recently did a local flight, and it's actually over a dam. And I'll show you some of the images that we collected here. And this is just taken with a standard GoPro camera. And it's taken sort of straight down NADA imagery in this particular case. And you can see I can sort of step through the different images of the dam. And this is one of the sort of standard ways you're going to get images in. And you'll get a folder full of images, and you can pick through and hunt through and look at each individual image. What drone to map is going to enable us to do is to take all these images and stitch them together into one large image, or an orthomosaic. So now that can be used in any of your web products or desktop products as maybe a base map or as a particular image product that you need. So let me actually bring you into drone to map and sort of show you around a little bit. Drone to map has several workflows, and the workflow that I have on the screen right now is called the inspection workflow. And what this has done is I flew the drone around this dam, and you can see the circular flight pattern of the drone, and each of the green arrows is showing where the photograph was taken and the direction that the photograph was taken in. I'm associating that now with a viewer on my screen, and I can step through each of these individual pictures. And you'll notice as I move the pictures, the little red dot there, the red arrow will move to show where I took these. So this is as the drone is sort of flying around this dam. One of the things on the inspection workflow is if I'm looking for something particular, I can now zoom in quite tightly to the quality of the image. And again, this is just a standard GoPro. But I could zoom into an area of interest, and now I can actually mark out that area of interest, as this is something that needs to be followed up on. I can add an annotation to that, and then I can export that as a particular image that we need to follow up on, whether it's an investigation, or in this case it could even be a potential issue with the dam. So this is an inspection workflow, and this works both with oblique imagery, that's imagery taken from the side as this is, and NADA imagery, which is imagery taken straight up and down. Some of the other products in here, as I mentioned, if I'll open a new product here, is a 2D. And the 2D takes those photographs that I just showed you in the folder, and each one of these blue dots represents one of the photographs. And what the software has done is stitch those all together into a singular picture. To help you easily understand what that is, if I just change the base map to a light gray base map, you'll now see how the Drone to Map software has stitched everything together into one orthomosaic. So that product could now be brought into any of our desktop products, ArcGIS Pro, our ArcMap desktop products, or now we can publish and share that up in the web. So if you look at what Ryan was just showing you with some of the special events, imagine being able to take a drone and fly right before a special event and process the imagery and now have a base map for that special event that is conceivably an hour old rather than a base map that could be many hours old. It maintains the quality of the imagery, and I'll sort of zoom down in here and show you the sort of detail that we can get, again, just using a straight GoPro camera, and this was flown with the 3DR Solo quadcopter. One of the other really exciting workflows in here is 3D. So when you take imagery which is taken at an oblique angle, we can actually turn that into a 3D model. So this is the flight path that my drone flew around the dam, and you can see the dam in the background there. I'm still using the gray canvas. The red circle is just a clipping zone, so I'm not processing data too far afield. If I go into a 3D view of this, first we can just see the actual flight path of the drone above the image. But now if I zoom in, you can actually see that I've created a 3D model using basic 2D images of that dam. And now if I lay in the standard image background, you'll see that it lines up with the standard imagery that Esri is offering as a base map. So now I've got my 3D model completely in place, geographically correct inside my map product here. To run these was a very, very simple process. And one of the things about Drone to Map is its simplicity to use. You don't have to be a GIS expert to do this. So if I just choose one of the workflows, and this is a rapid workflow which would be done in the field to make sure that you're actually capturing the sort of the footprint of the area that you want to, and you might run this off your laptop. So I'm just going to call this a survey collection, and I can add a folder full of data. And you'll see that each one of these has been stamped with a latitude, longitude, and an altitude. I can now just bring this into my Drone to Map software. It'll automatically calculate the flight path and show where each of the images was taken. And all you need to do is press the start button and it starts processing. There are some more sophisticated advanced options in here to produce other products, such things as point clouds. And these will all be produced automatically for you while it runs. But it's simply as easy as clicking the start button. When you're done with a product, it's now yours on the desktop, and it produces a folder with all the product output. But you can also very easily now share this data, which is one of the most powerful things right from the application. You have the share tile layer and share scene. So when this is finished processing, you can simply share that either with a portal internally behind your own firewall, or you can share that with an online instance of the portal. It just enables very quick turnaround of data processing. And so the main sort of workflows here are an inspection workflow, a 2D workflow, and a 3D workflow. Some of the outputs you get, and I'll show you some of the 3D outputs here from the dam. This is the folder that is produced of the outputs. And some of these files are pretty easy to work with. For instance, we've got a point cloud here which we can bring in, and we've also got a scene layer which we can bring in. So if we look at some other products, say like ArcGIS Earth, I could just take my scene product here and drag and drop it. And then I can now easily use our Earth tool to, again, visualize in 3 dimensions this data and drive that 3D workflow of the dam. And this could be sort of any infrastructure which you flew right in ArcGIS Earth. Another workflow would be to take some of these here, like the point cloud, and bring those into products such as ArcGIS Pro. So here's the same imagery which we've brought into ArcGIS Pro. Again, we have the flight path and the points where each picture was taken. We can turn those on and off. Then we also have the orthomosaic, which was created. And again, you can zoom into this, and I could use this as a base map, or you can use it for sort of detailed inspections. But some of the other things is not just the pretty picture. You actually get some data associated with this as well. You can bring in a hillshade model. There's also a digital surface model, so that gives you elevation heights. So analysts can now do different workflows on that, such as change detection. You can also do other standard change detection workflows. So if you're looking at a border and you're putting a drone up into an area where you don't want to be able to put a human because it's dangerous, and you want to look at change detection, paths of travel, those sort of things can be very easily determined now from a GIS analyst using data from these products and not just the image and having to do some image studying, but they can use the analytic tools that are available throughout the platform. I did talk about sort of sharing these. I've got a scene right here. This is starting to draw in the point cloud from that 3D image which we just created by processing that in the Drone to Map software. And these can easily be brought in and shared up in your ArcGIS Online or portal. So here is a web map, and in my web map I can also bring my shading in and show you that. But this can now be used and shared, and I could bring different layers in all throughout my GIS to complement the imagery or the analytics that's being created with this. Again, I have a 3D model which we created. I can easily bring this into a web scene, bookmark the web scene, and now I can sort of start flying sort of virtually around the areas. This is very powerful for doing infrastructure inspections or just sort of mapping out locations quickly and easily. Again, we've sort of taken yeah.
Yeah, so John, I'll just ask you, so if you can kind of compare and contrast the difference between the old days when it would take months and months and a lot of money to return something like this compared to the time and effort it took to do what you're showing right here. So to master this this application for a moderate user, how would you quantify the time investment?
It's actually extremely easy, Carl. First of all, we go do the data acquisition, which is fly the drone and collect that imagery, and then you bring it into the Drone to Map software. And literally, all you have to do is press the start button, and it'll process it for you. I was quite amazed the first time I ran this. There are some more sophisticated options. You can add control points, ground control points, and you can either collect these yourself on the ground, on a GPS, or using some of Esri's other tools like Collector, or you can simply get your ground control points from the map. And Esri's base map has elevation built into it, so I can actually collect ground control points from here. But it's extremely easy. You don't have to go and spend the money on the satellite imagery or hire pilots to go fly in an airplane and then do sophisticated sort of analysis and processing afterwards. You go fly your drone, you drop it into here, you can do it in the field, and you can do it in an hour or two.
So yeah, so in 2 hours you could fly the LA Coliseum, come back, and be showing something like this.
Yeah, correct. We actually did fly the LA Coliseum, and we created both 2D and 3D products from our flights over the Coliseum. And yes, it took a little longer to process, maybe 2 hours to process the data because of the amount of images that we collected, but we ended up with an extremely high quality base map where you can zoom down and almost see the seat numbers.
Right. So to kind of summarize some of the things that John's talked about, folks, thank you, John. The potential workflows that this can support are many, collecting and cataloging your critical infrastructure for your CIKR responsibilities that you might have. We didn't really get into a border security use case, being able to fly this up and down sections of the U.S. where it might be dangerous to put people. Emergency management to understand disaster impact. Certainly a ton of intel workflows, and then special event management support, getting near real-time imagery as your base map instead of old imagery. So that was great, John. Thank you very much. We're going to move now to Matt White, who's going to talk about his efforts of leveraging unstructured data and connecting that with structured and bringing that all into a GIS. So Matt, we will turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Yeah, my name is Matthew White. I'm down here at the Northeast Florida Fusion Center. Just a quick overview. We mentioned a little bit about fusion centers, but Florida, if you know much about fusion centers or if you're familiar with the centers in the country, there are a lot of them. Some are what are called formally recognized or received direct funds from DC. Others are not. In Florida, we have a mix. We have a system by which the money essentially primarily goes through our state fusion center, and then we have 7 regions. Each region has one, or in one case 2 fusion centers that kind of work together as one. So that's kind of the lay of the land in Florida, just so people understand. If you haven't heard of Northeast Florida Fusion Center, that's probably because you've looked at maybe a list of federally recognized ones and you wouldn't have necessarily seen it on that list. So just to give you a little sense for who we are. We cover about 13 counties. Okay, Jacksonville is a city of about a little under 1 million people. We have, unlike Boston, we have rural areas as well. We have college towns that are a couple hours outside. Our jurisdiction actually crosses the state over to a small area called Cedar Key on the other coast of Florida. So it's a fairly large area with a pretty radical mix in terms of what we have, demographics and everything in that area. And we have a lot of different types of areas. So our fusion center is relatively small. People say if you've been to one fusion center, you've been to one fusion center, because they can be very different. Ours is quite small, and we have a small budget. We had some initial funding. The initial funding we had was pretty good, but we've gone on a small budget. All of our analysts are donated from agencies. We don't have our own staff per se. We have a very small budget, and I think that's what makes this story probably really impressive when you get to the end and kind of what I talk about. You're not going to see a ton of sexy maps here, because what I'm talking about is a little less sexy unless you're really in data. But I think the results are pretty sexy, so hopefully you'll appreciate it. We focus on 2 things here. We don't help Jacksonville with crime analysis in Jacksonville. They have 20 analysts there. They have a great crime analysis shop, intel analysts. So we focus on cross-jurisdictional crime, and we focus on homeland security things, essentially suspicious activity, etc. So the biggest thing we did when we started, and the smartest move we made, was we focused on getting data. Our fusion center does not have large screen TVs. When you walk in, you will not be blown away. What we did, though, is we focused on getting data. We were fortunate because we were an early links region. We were able to then go ahead and get a commitment from all of our, I think we're up to 173 agencies in Southeast Links now. At the time, it was probably 90 or 100. And get everybody to share. So we have essentially the buy-in from our entire region to take the data from Southeast Links, which is everyone's RMS data, including narratives in our region. So we have everybody's RMS data. We have field interviews. We even have bulletins. I'll talk about that separately in a minute. We get from a different route. And so all this data is integrated essentially in a system. And so what we've done is gotten permission to take that data and make a copy of it and use it for analytics. Okay, now along with that comes a big challenge. The reality is we are talking about really big data here. We are doing a very high volume, and it's coming at night. Every night, it's high, what we call a high velocity of coming in these reports. Okay, and different police agencies have different RMSs. And I'm sure anybody, maybe Boston doing the 9 agencies, will tell you, when you try and map together different records management systems, there's a lot of time and energy that goes into that. It's getting better, but it's still a big problem. They collect different things. We have a lot of agencies that literally don't even collect the same kinds of data. Their fields are blank for certain things. So this creates a real challenge for us because the normalization just isn't there. Something as simple as robbery, we can't get robbery to business, right? Because something as simple as robbery isn't consistently captured across all these 173 agencies. So we've had to do some adjusting to the way we think about how we look at data and mine for what we want to get the stuff we want out of that data. So we also have a challenge because we have a really diverse set of analysts here. We have people liaisoning from places like the Coast Guard, who's an intel analyst. They're not our staff. So they have different skill sets. They have different kind of missions. We all have a kind of a similar mission together, but we have a lot going on in terms of needs. The Coast Guard person, for example, wants maritime stuff. And I'll mention the fact that this allowed, when they first came here, the Coast Guard first came here, and we set them up for the maritime stuff, going through the structured and unstructured data, which we'll talk about more in a minute. They literally found drug wash-ups on our shores from fast boats that the Coast Guard had never been told about from local law enforcement. So that's the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about, getting that extra knowledge that, you know, it's really hard to get across so many jurisdictions with such different data sources. So the other thing before I go step forward, sorry, step back. There's a little delay, sorry. So the other thing I wanted to mention is we're not just talking about narratives here. When we talk about unstructured data, we're talking about anything that isn't a nice, neat drop-down with a limited set of choices, right? So we want the structured data because if it has what we want on it, that's great. But we also want the unstructured side. And when I say unstructured, I'm not just talking about narratives. We are talking about supplements. We're talking about property tables. Okay, so if we're looking for thefts of certain types of construction equipment, that kind of thing, that's going to be in property tables, and it's going to be essentially unstructured data, right? They'll be spelled different ways, written different ways. We even have issues with some people put in 20 cell phones as one line item, 20 cell phones stolen. Other agencies will actually list out every single cell phone. So there's all this stuff that goes in it, which makes it really complicated. So the way we've kind of gotten around this problem is we've really paid a lot of attention to treating a police document like a document. So we essentially convert, we don't necessarily have to do this, but we essentially, if you want to think about it this way, we convert it back to a report. We convert it back to the document, and we look at it as a document. So it's a problem then because we have to understand how to look at a document because structured tools don't apply anymore. So what we've done is we have a tool we use. There's tools to do this. We use a tool. It's called UReveal. But what we do is we actually build out all these kind of, you can think of them as ontologies or queries. They're a little more cool and sophisticated than that, actually. There's a lot more that goes into them. And it scales to the kind of data we're talking about here we're doing, which is, you know, a little under 1 million records a month is what we're looking at, and we're getting those at a velocity that's daily. So what you see here is our suspicious activity. So for suspicious activity in our region, we have to look at, you know, near 800,000 documents a month. And we have one analyst who does suspicious activity. Well, how can they possibly look at and vet anything that they would care about with that many documents? They can't possibly read them. They can't run searches and searches and searches. So we've done a couple things with SAR. We've built out these models that essentially look for phrases, words. Proximity of words is massively important, right? This word within so many words, this word, these kinds of things. And we've built these models, and they're kind of like Lego blocks. You can pop them together and take them apart. What you're looking at is our SAR version 2 of what we have that is kind of an overarching concept. And we've plugged under that Lego block all these other Lego blocks of things we care about. And by the way, this list is a very small list of what's actually in it. There's probably about 5 times that many, and maybe 8 times as many than you actually see in that screen. But you can see the kind of things we're looking about for suspicious activity that relates to it. We're looking at, you know, anti-government stuff, anarchy, doxing. Everybody remembers Jade Helm, probably, ISIS. So we have all these different things we're looking at. And any one of these things can be described a bunch of different ways, and it changes. ISIS didn't exist for a while. Jade Helm didn't exist, right? We had to add those. Jade Helm's going to come back out. So this is a dynamic thing. You can't build this and walk away. Analysts have to be able to do this on the fly as things develop. And they need to be something that's going to go in and get it moving forward, and it's going to get it retroactively looking backwards as well, so that they can be fully aware of everything that's been going on related to any given topic, no matter how it was spelled, no matter where it was put in a police report. That's really the key. We also have one at the bottom called SAR Cited. To make this even easier on police officers and on the analysts, we basically have gone to all 13 of our counties in our region, and we've said, if you write SAR, S-A-R, anywhere in a police report, I don't care if it's what section, I don't care where it is, I don't care if it's in a field interview, if you write that, we are going to look at that document. So if it makes the hairs in your neck stand up, put it in there. We're going to vet it, we're going to review it as if it is potentially a SAR. So that's one thing we've done. That saved anybody having to go to a new system. Police officers don't have to go into another place and do another report. We don't have to build into every RMS a SAR drop-down field across 13 counties and 200 agencies. All they do is write SAR in it, we get it. If it's a SAR 15 rifle, we exclude that. If it's search and rescue, we have ways to exclude that in the actual collection. So that's all built into the model for the one at the bottom, which is SAR cited. So now we look for the behaviors and the things that we want and care about, but we just also want if an officer thinks it's suspicious as well. And that way we kind of cover both with one process. So this is kind of what a review page would look like traditionally. So this is the list. I'll talk about, this is great, but I'll talk about some shortcomings, which is why we are going to the GIS-based model first. We've always used GIS in conjunction with this data, but we're going to a model where the vetting is actually done through the GIS interface, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But you can see in this case, we're looking at SAR2 for a 1-month folder is what you're looking at. And you see the words, whether they're in proximity or just alone, depending on the way the concept was written. You see the words that made it a hit and why that document's a hit, and you can see the agency on the right. We have a lot of agencies that aren't in my AOR because we have all the Southeast Links data. We only really focus on our 13 counties, and we kick the rest back to Florida Fusion Center to disperse or to look at, the other counties can look at their own in their regions of Florida. But on the right you see Manatee County, JSO is Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, the Airport Police, Escambia County, Gainesville Police. So you see quite a few different agencies represented in that list. And on the right you see a pop-up. If you clicked on one of those, you can read or look at the entire report from the structured field all the way through the narrative. In this case, I've blocked out most of it, but you can still see the narrative. You got military personnel with a drone in their backyard. They've had some threatening calls or some calls related to ISIS. That's what that's about. So let's get to the GIS side, the cool stuff, the Esri stuff. So now, one of the things we found in looking at SARs is there's a lot of communications issues. A lot of our SARs were never known about by the JTTF. Okay, we discovered them in data. They never got to the JTTF, the Joint Terrorism Task Force. We had issues where agencies would have people living there that were suspicious in other counties, okay, and they had no idea that they were under suspicion. Or we've had a lot of this kind of stuff in the past. So one of the interesting things about going to the GIS model is we map every address with all 800,000 or so documents a month. So if it's a home address, if it's a business address, any address in there, we're going to map. Okay, and we make sure everything gets on the map. If there is not even a valid address, it's going to go to the actual police department building that it came from for that agency. That way we don't have to go check a list for all the ones we missed on the map, right? Everything's getting on the map, every address. And so what the analyst can do, the analyst can basically look at the map, and you notice red and blue dots on this map. Okay, so the blue dots are SARs that have been vetted or looked at. They are actual, they were a SAR for some reason, whether the officer wrote SAR, whether we picked up on a behavior or something suspicious. And if I click on one of those red dots, I can go ahead and vet those as well. Okay, so now you notice most of the blue dots are up in Northeast Florida, not down by Tampa or over in Pensacola on the left side of your screen. That's because those aren't our AOR. But what you will see is you see a blue dot in Tallahassee, for example. We didn't click on Tallahassee's SAR and review it. That is a home address for somebody who is in a suspicious activity over in our region. So now we immediately know when we vet these things how we have cross-jurisdictional ties. We can let Tallahassee know whatever jurisdiction is appropriate over there. We can let the JT. Everybody knows about what the suspicious activity are. So this is just a view of how they actually vet it. You know, by the way, from this, if I go back, you can actually we have a link to click and read the narratives on these. So when they click on those dots, they're going to actually pop up the entire report again, a view of the whole report, narrative and everything. It's going to say which words were why it hit, and they're going to be off and running, vetting it, and doing the kinds of things we do, really pre-investigation, I would guess you'd say, pre-vetting. Then they're going to go ahead and, in terms of editing, this is our portal because you can edit, right? So you're going to see, I blocked it out here, you're going to have why it was a SAR, it's going to have the words there, it's going to have the agency it came from, right? And it's going to say validated no, you can change that to yes, you put in your initials, and then you're going to go put the status for it, whether it's under review, whatever it might be. Okay, and you can write your analyst notes, and that becomes important in the reporting in just a moment. This is just one more screenshot of how it looks now when I switch to a different layer. So now instead of the vetting layer, I'm actually on the finished product layer. These are ones that are valid SARs, things that we consider to be suspicious activity reports. So that's what this map is, and you see the different addresses, types of addresses are the color coding on the dots: home addresses, work, residence, etc. So you can see in the one I've got highlighted, I've clicked on, you can see the kind of terms and words that were why it was originally came under our review. The status is under review. And if you read about it, this is a suspicious person described as Greek or Arabic reported at a gay nightclub. This is a week after Orlando, so obviously we jumped on this one naturally. And then the product of that on the back end is now that we've done all this, we can go ahead and pop this out. So we take the map straight from there, we pop it into Crystal along with the actual SARs, and now we have a SAR report that has everything you need to know about that report. We also make sure to include everything because, first of all, this is going to all the agencies that have access to the same system only. And second of all, you're not missing details. When people summarize SARs into short paragraphs, you don't get the make of the car. You don't get the details in it that might connect it to something you're working on or aware of. So we like to kind of provide the whole thing. We produce about 12, on a typical week, about a dozen SARs are what we actually typically come up with. Only some of those go into the shared space because we consider anything officer safety also to be a SAR, so we have some different parameters that are a little more expansive than the federal desire for what a SAR would be. Okay, but it allows us to share it, coordinate, make sure everybody knows about these SARs, report it, and of course more analysis. But here's the bottom line. The bottom line is we have one analyst going through almost 1 million reports a month, okay, and producing 12 SARs a week on average. We produce more SARs out of our region of Florida than any other region of Florida. In fact, I think typically more than the rest of Florida. And it's not because we're great or wonderful, it's because we have set up a system that allows us to be really efficient in seeing these things and getting the information and getting going. And the really cool thing is it's a step and repeat model. So we have applied the same thing to maritime. Okay, so the Coast Guard Intel knows everything that relates to a boat. It's a boat VIN number, they know about it. It can be anything, anything related to maritime, which has its own terms that don't fit well into crime data anyway. They're not in drop-down fields in police data. And we've applied it to gangs. Any reference to a gang, whether they have a gang name, whether they're registered or not, if that report references gang stuff, our FBI gang person is vetting those and putting out the same kind of report for anything related to gangs in our 13 counties. So it's a nice step and repeat model as well.
All right, Matt, that is I think a great example of the whole workflow, the collection, the interrogation and exploitation of multi-data sets, and then pushing it out from the dissemination standpoint. Very, very good examples. Thank you. We're going to push this over now to Art and Linda, where their focus is going to be pretty deep into some new analytical capabilities in what we call insights for ArcGIS. So, Art, I'll let you take it over, and then Linda.
Hey, thanks for making the time for us today. Hopefully my line is okay on the computer audio. I was having some problems earlier. Insights for ArcGIS. Let's get into it. If we can move to the next slide here really quick. My name is Art Haddad, and joined by my colleague Linda Beal. We'll be going over this. I always start out with this one statement. Data is very important. We all know it. It's critical to our success. However, I also want to assert that, in fact, it's not as important as the answers it provides or the stories that it tells. And that, in fact, is what Insights was built around. It's a new capability that we're adding to ArcGIS. It focuses and emphasizes spatial analysis in a very fast, easy-to-use, and intuitive experience that is designed around exploring and interacting with your data within a spatial capacity, but also adds just enough traditional data analysis to the pie as well. It's an experience that enables us to ask questions of your data. It's really what it comes down to. Ultimately, an analytic project is organized using a new concept that we're adding to ArcGIS at 10.5, known as workbooks, and you organize your analysis into pages with the use of cards. But as traditional with Insights, the best way to talk about it is to actually show it. So with that, Linda, can you just jump right in?
Hi. So I'm going to do a quick run through of some features that we have in Insights that I'd like to show you. So we work with the workbooks. I'm going to open up a workbook I already have. So I can now add in some data that I have in my organizational account. So this is showing arrests around the area of Boston. So let me just zoom into that map. So any spatial data that we have is immediately mapped when we go into that data, so you can see that. We also expose all of the attributes, so the idea is that you work directly with that data. So let's have a look at some time data here. So I'm going to bring it in. You'll see as I drop that we can actually work with our data on these cards as either charts, tables, or as maps. Everything is completely interactive within this, so you'll see as I click along this timeline, it's selecting out those arrests that have occurred at that period of time. We can change the map style with a single click, so let me change that to a heat map. So now we're essentially seeing a density of all of those arrests that have occurred around the Boston area, and again that's updating immediately as I'm selecting that timeline. When we bring in date fields, we immediately interrogate that data behind the scenes, so we break that data down into each one of the attributes of data. So if I drag this across, you can now see across the 4 years of data, you can see the trend in that data. We could look at it by month. So we can immediately pull out these patterns, and again you'll see that interactivity between all of these cards that we have. So that was bringing in some data from my online account. I can bring it in from the whole organizational account. I can also bring in data directly from an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to bring in an Excel data set, and also I can connect directly to any one of the business databases. So we've got SAP HANA, Teradata, or an SQL database. So we can connect directly to that and bring the data in immediately. So let's bring in the Excel spreadsheet. So you'll see that I can immediately start working with that. So I can show that either as a table or as a chart. So we can bring in that data. We can see that. We can change any one of these visualizations. So you see that we're looking at charts, tables, and maps. We can actually change immediately between these two with a single click. So I could view that as in this case we've gone from a bar chart to a column chart, or we can go to some more interesting visualizations, so down to the bubble charts, and we can always go back to the map at any stage as well. So we can quickly visualize that data. We can geocode any one of our data sets that we've brought in that's non-spatial, so we can enable the location, we can geocode it by coordinates, we can use addresses, or we can join that to a geography. If you have your boundary data sets, your neighborhoods or something, you can join in that data. So we've seen the different visualizations. We can also get the statistics on the data. So if I flip the card, you'll see on the back, you see that we're looking at 42,000 arrests in there. We can also look at it within a table. So let's have a look at the number of arrests down here on the table. You'll see that the number of arrests that we've done by each one of these districts, or because this is dynamically calculated, I could update this by any one of the different features. So I could look at it, we're looking at it by division. We could also look at it by beat, and you see that dynamically recalculates the totals that we have that's also reported down at the bottom here. So I brought in some data sets there from Excel, also from my organizational account. I'm going to move these data sets across to my second page. So let's move across the Excel table as well. So you'll see now I've just dragged those across to a new table. I can do a new analysis on that table. I'm going to link these two data sets together. So I'm going to look at my booking arrests and all of those gangs. I'm going to join these two based on the CR number. So that's the information I have in common between these two data sets. So now you'll see a new data set was created there, and you'll see that I have location within this, and now I have that gang name that I was brought in from my Excel spreadsheet. So if I drag that attribute across to a new card, you'll see now that I can map that information for the gang names. Of course I can create a chart, of course I can create a table, and all of these pieces of information are linked between each one of these cards. So we've brought in non-spatial data, we've joined that on a common attribute without requiring too much information, just by simple drag and drop interface. So we can also, in the same way we've seen in previous examples, we can interrogate the data, so we can drill down into that little bit. So let's take the years that we've broken out the information to. So I could drill down into it and just select the information, just do a query, so that I'm just looking at 2013 data. We'll see that's now reduced that amount. So that's querying it by the information that sits within your data. You might also want to query it spatially, so you might want to just look at a particular area. So we can actually draw around the areas the same as we've seen before. You can select out information that way, or you can select out a specific neighborhood. So I'm just going to pick up the polygon for that neighborhood. You'll see as I drag it across, I can filter by that selected area. So that should just now pull out the information that I have for 2013 just in the area of Boston. So it's also very much about spatial analysis. This is really what, although we're visualizing the data in lots of different ways, we're seeing charts, maps, and tables, it's really about allowing you to do analysis within that data. So you'll see here I've got a number of different analysis. I've got buffer, I've got density. I can do aggregation, so I could just spatially aggregate, again, just by dragging across the number of arrests into my neighborhoods, and that will just aggregate that data up so that now I can see the total amount of arrests that have occurred in each one of these neighborhoods, and I have the information in context with that. So we have a number of different ways we can do the analysis. By the drag and drop we've already seen. We also have the action button that we can see. So you can run different spatial tools here, or if you're not so familiar with the type of analysis you want to do, you can actually go into the find answers, and this will give you help as to ways you can pull out that information from that card. So let's use proximity that we have within our data set. So we could change this, so we're looking at the distances between different arrests we have in this example. So now you'll see that it's found those nearest features between these 2-point data sets, and it will also get the information reported as to the distance between them all. So whilst I've been doing all of this analysis as a drag and drop process, the one last thing to show you is that everything we've been doing has actually been recorded. So I have my whole of my workflow documented. If this was some kind of workflow that you wanted to share, so if you're working in one particular geographic area, so I was working in Boston, and I wanted to share my workflow with other people working in Florida who want to repeat the same analysis, you can share that exact same workflow. They can bring in their own data, they can update that data set with their own data set, they can replace the fields, and then they can rerun that exact analysis that they've run. So you can share your workflows. You can also, it's also documenting your workflow, so you'll see that that's repeated on each one of these pages that I've been doing. So as well as sharing the workflow, we can also share the results of the analysis. So you'll see if I go here, I could have shared that as a model, so that's sharing your workflow, but I can also share the page, which is going to be showing each one of these cards. So I can share that internally, so just with other colleagues. I may not want them to actually be able to change the analysis, or I could share this externally by putting it on a website. So if I share this to a page, you'll see that you could share this to your bosses or whatever, and they still have all of that interactivity, so you still see you get that information, but they're not able to do any of the analysis because that action button doesn't appear, so they can't change the results of any of the work that you've been doing. So that's a very quick overview of Insights. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
That is great, Linda and Art. Thank you. So that's a almost like a business intelligence tool where, and again, the complete workflow, the collection, the analysis, and in a unique way in disseminating that information, where the requirement of understanding ArcMap or desktop GIS is no longer required. If you can run Excel or Access, you're capable of running something like Insights, which is very different than it was years ago, where some of the tools were quite frankly took a time commitment, a time investment to really master. So Brenda, if you can send us over to the last page, we're going to close things down, folks. Just so you know, a couple things, some upcoming webinars from our team are listed here on our site right now. We went through, especially in the beginning, a bunch of examples of different types of workflows like human intelligence and drug interdiction, active shooter. We went through those really quickly by design because we didn't have time to show you everything. So if you are interested in helping us kind of develop what the next webinar would be, please indicate in your survey or just connect us directly, and we would love to do that. And we can also do this specific to a webinar specific to your agency. So if there's a strong enough interest, we'd be happy to connect with you guys directly at the agency level to help you extend your use of GIS in your intelligence workflows. So we went about 6 minutes over. Sorry for that, but thank you everybody for participating. My fellow panelists, thank you very much for your input. It was great, and we are going to close out this now for today. And have a great day, everybody. Thanks.